An X is an X for a reason, right? Well, the general popular advice out there is to not bother with trying to rekindle an old flame. So we all know this. And if we all know better, then why do so many people keep trying to get back with an old flame or an ex, even sometimes years later? Well, we do this because of how our brain works. That's first thing. The second reason we do it is because sometimes it actually works out. Now, is it going to work out with you? Or is it going to crash and burn and ruin your life? So, as I like to say, gentlemen, buckle up because I'm going to give you some guidance here. By the time we are done with this video and this talk, you're going to know what you need to do in order for it to work out, if it can work out with an old flame. And more importantly, you know what not to do to screw up your life with these sorts of things and how not to get hung up on past relationships. So, as you guys know, this is a live video, right? So ask questions in the chat. And, if you have anything, just throw a question in there and I'll try to get to it. Super chats or little stickers or whatever help the algorithms, and it helps your question get noticed as well. So I'll try to notice what you're asking me. All right. But yeah, we're gonna break this down. And this was brought up by a guy in my community. But he's not the only person. So I'm doing this video because there really are a couple people who are kind of facing this issue right now, where they're looking at getting back with an ex flame or an ex girlfriend or someone they used to see or used to have sex with or whatever, and they've kind of started to rekindle stuff, and they got questions. Some are actively in it, some are thinking about it, what have you. So this is a common thing that comes up, even though we know the general advice is not to do it, because it usually doesn't work out. But there are those exceptions, though. Like, I do know of scenarios where people have gotten back together over a period of time, sometimes years and years later, and it ends up working out. They end up being happy. And I think we all know about those cases, or at least have heard about those cases, which is the reason why I think it can be so inviting to people to want to try this out. Then there's the other aspect for how our brain works and how our brain processes breakups and attachments and information that causes us to often want to travel back into an old relationship. So I'm going to start there. We're going to start with how our brain's working and why we do this anyway. Like, why in general do we try to get back with people that it didn't work out with before? And so we're gonna go over that. I'm gonna go share my screen here. Oh, I should mention, so my community is a great place to ask these questions and to get through problems, or to set goals and achieve goals as well. It's not just solving problems, it's also making yourself better. And the community I have is a men's community focused on inner game and focused on your relationships, right? Dating, okay, dating multiple women or being in a monogamous relationship, any of those things, okay? So your romantic relationships as well as your inner game. And, what is your inner game? That is having a winning mindset and taking the right actions in order to get the results towards winning or getting near goals. All right. That means removing obstacles. That means removing trauma. That means removing negative and poor thought patterns, right? So that we can have a winning mindset, winning thought patterns, a winning physiological action, our reaction, our state, your emotional state, your mental state is that of somebody who is going to achieve what you're trying to achieve. And of course, there's a bunch of mindset tools to get you there. And those tools are all going to come in really handy when you're handling your relationships and handling women. So that's what we're doing over at the community. There's a link, all right, down below. I don't know what that was, but yeah, there's a link down below, right? And so you guys can click on that if you haven't joined yet. And I highly suggest you join. It's free. You can ask questions there. You can get some attention. It's actually quite valuable of a resource, not to mention actually getting into coaching or doing a mastermind group or some of those things might be beneficial to you depending on what you're facing. So let's go over brain stuff. Going to go to my little share screen here. All right, so we're going to do this here. So let's look at what is going on from a neurochemical perspective in our brains. All right. So I'm looking at that. Yeah, there we go. So let's look at what's going on from a neurochemical perspective here. Okay. So let's look at the honeymoon period. You first meet somebody, first start dating them, pre-sex as well as post-sex. I mean, there's different things that happen post-sex. But we're going to kind of look at this, right? So in the beginning, assuming you're single, you're not just coming off of a previous relationship, your baseline oxytocin and vasopressin levels are lower, and you're focused on trying to get the girl. So the dopamine levels are high as you get to next steps with the girl, right? So you get the phone number, or you get the text communication, you get the dates, you go on the date, you make out with her a little bit, maybe you go on date number 2, maybe you guys start to have sex. These are all very dopamigenic. All right. So it's your dopamine system that's driving you towards, releasing your horniness on this girl and making things happen. This is, by the way, the neurochemical reaction I'm going through involves vasopressin. So it's very much what the male goes through. What the female goes through is a little bit different. I'm not really going to cover it in this video because it's not what we're, trying to deal with here. We're dealing with you men as I'm dealing with men. Men, do you get back with a woman? Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. There are some differences in the female, though, as they go through this. So just know that that's the fact. Main difference is going to be what the vasopressin does. Okay, and that can change things, makes breakups in the experience of a breakup I'd say much different for a woman than a guy, actually. And so that's one thing that's neglected in a lot of the breakup recovery type YouTube people and psychologists and whoever they are. Oftentimes they treat men and women as if they're the same. Neurologically, they are not the same. Okay, the chemical makeup of a female is different than a male. I know that's unpopular outside of biology, but we are talking about a physiological reaction. So if we don't recognize human biology and sex differences, we're doing the discussion a disservice. All right. I don't include beta endorphin in here. Beta endorphin is a long-term comfort sort of neurochemical. It's important in the process, but I didn't really include it to illustrate my point, and that's okay too. All right. So, but we're just going to kind of go through this. This is just to illustrate a point, really. It's not like this exactly scientific graph. All right. So that being said, what you have is you have your dopamine and your norepinephrine. You can look at that as like your good stress. That's not exactly correct, 100% correct, but that's correct enough for this discussion. So you can look at like your good stress. There's a certain amount of tension. There's a certain amount of stress. All right. There's a certain amount of satisfaction you're getting and good feelings, euphoric feelings, the serotonin feelings when, you're getting when you're reaching certain goals and you're having, satisfaction with this new female, right? There's cortisol. There's some stress levels there because you're worried about stuff happening, but most of the stress is more of a positive stress rather than a negative. So your cortisol levels and bad feelings are usually lower. And the oxytocin hasn't fully built up yet. The vasopressin hasn't fully built up yet. So this is really the beginning of the honeymoon period, right? When you first start dating, this is kind of what's going on. And so then we fast forward to, okay, so now in the relationship, during the incline of the relationship. So as the relationship starts to build, usually post first sexual experience, right? So you've had sex with her and you're having frequent sex with her and enjoying it. She's enjoying it. Things are going well. You're in a relationship that's moving upward. So it's not as high dopamine, all right, but they're still achieving stuff. There's still dopamine in there. All right. The stress, some of that stress comes down. So that cortisol is lower. You're actually less stressed out in a negative way because you're getting, a lot of good feelings from this relationship. So your general level stress should be down or low. Again, this is a very general overview, guys. Obviously, different people are going to have some differences, but this is a general overview. The good stress comes down a bit too. It's not so intense, and some of the dopamine comes down a bit too once sex starts happening. But those are replaced by oxytocin and vasopressin. So you're getting these euphoric feelings post sex as you get emotionally drawn into this person, and you're getting a strong sense of wanting to caretake for this person. So as you continually have a sexual relationship and as things are going well and you're building, you feel as if you need to take care of the needs of the woman that you're with, and that's the vasopressin. Strong sense of caretaking and protecting, and sometimes mate protecting as well, can come from vasopressin. And oxytocin levels are now elevated way beyond baseline because you're getting regular sex, regular physical contact, regular closeness, regular emotional, exchanges with this woman. And serotonin, of course, is at a nice happy level and all that stuff too. So things are going happy, things are good, right? The oxytocin, vasopressin levels are cranking out good feelings for you. All right. Now, what I don't show on the graph is beta endorphin would be rising as you become more and more attached. All right. And so I should have put beta endorphin in here, but I just didn't. So we'll just talk about it. All right. So now, then there's a breakup. So what happens is the relationship will decline. So as the relationship declines, the oxytocin levels particularly start to go downwards. Sex usually is following a drop off of that. So what happens is oxytocin's going down for her, and she's less motivated. So she's less motivated to have sex with you, and you become more familiar. So dopamine levels, all right, norepinephrine levels, all that stuff comes down. By the time you get to a breakup, you are pretty much in a high level of stress. So cortisol is cranking really high because you're about to lose what you've associated as your, relationship partner, and about to lose your source of oxytocin and vasopressin. Okay. So those are all coming down. You still have and now you're sort of stuck, and beta endorphin is not getting fed either. So beta endorphin is causing an addictive response. All right. So there's like a level of addiction you have to this person and a feeling of not wanting to lose them, which is causing cortisol and stress to go up. Not being able to get a steady sort of stream of oxytocin and vasopressin, and particularly not getting the beta endorphin, is causing an addictive response. So now it's like an addiction, and you're feeling like you need this person during this breakup and post breakup. Cortisol level, stress level starts skyrocketing. All the good, happy, chilled out serotonin levels are plummeted. Norepinephrine, good stress, and dopamine are low. So you're in a depressive state, and really a state of angst in some ways. So you go between depression, between that feeling low and depressed, to feeling angst and just bad, like someone stabbed you in the stomach kind of a feeling. And you're going through withdrawals because you're not getting your beta endorphin fed or your oxytocin, vasopressin, neurochemicals fed. So that's what happens during the breakup. Okay. So so during the breakup, you have this response where you have a lot of pain. So in the neurological community, they call this pain pleasure balance. So the pain pleasure balance in the brain is now really off post breakup. Okay. And so you feel a lot of pain, and you just kind of want that pain to go away. And this changes your behavior. It makes you do stupid things during breakups and post breakups to try to get this person back, to try to qualify to this person. To some guys will beg and plead, and come on, let's work it out. Some guys will lose their shit, get angry, get upset, stalker social media, like all this crappy, like this weird and messed up stuff that you guys do during these breakups, and that she's doing too, is because it is a lot of pain, and that pleasure area of the brain is now being completely suppressed, right? And so that pain pleasure balance is off, and you just want this pain to go away. This is a very much like a response from an addiction. So it's very, very similar to those who are addicted to drugs or alcohol and what their experience with withdrawals during a breakup. All right. Now, I've been saying this for a long time. I've been saying this for years. So this isn't new information. This is a review for those of you who follow me. But I'll reference, there's different doctors who have talked about this with dopamine in the brain and addiction and addictive chemicals and how that shows up in romantic relationships. But I'll reference Dr. Lucy Brown here just to reference somebody different because there's so many people who have researched this. So it's pretty well established. But she's a clinical professor of neurology at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and she presents the argument about breakups triggering withdrawal symptoms, which, again, not the first time I've heard it. I've been saying it for a long time. She conducted, and her team has conducted several different studies that found that individuals in the love experience, they experience a euphoric state equating to this natural reward. And then she draws parallels between the symptoms of heartbreak and the symptoms of loss and stuff like that, and craving and emotional dependence. She compares all that stuff compared to the withdrawal symptoms experienced by drug addicts. And you can see from MRI scans that have been done by her and our team that the observed changes in the brain and blood flow and neurochemical responses views pictures when they view pictures of their ex-romantic partners. You can see these changes in the brain, and you can see that basically it's mirroring or very, very similar to those who have been addicted to drugs and are going through withdrawal symptoms, right? So when you're going through a breakup in the beginning phase, you got a lot of pain, a suppression of pleasure, and you want that pain to go away, and you want this other person and the presence or the time or the attention or any kind of sexual attention or anything from this other person. You're trying to get any of that in order to try to make this go away, just like a drug addict or an alcoholic. Okay. So in the beginning, that is pretty much, they mirror the same thing. All right. And then when we look at relapse rates of drug addicts, considering that these things are neurologically very, very similar, the relapse rate of drug or alcohol, drug addicts or alcoholics is between 40 to 60% within the first 30 days, and 85% will relapse once or more than once within a year. So somebody getting off of drugs, getting off of alcohol is the hardest, is the first 30 days. They're likely going to relapse during that time. All right. 40 to 60% chance. And in total, over the course of a year, most people, 85% of people, will relapse at least once, have a slip up, do their drug of choice or drink or do whatever within that time period. Right. So considering those numbers, it makes sense why in the beginning of the breakup, people end up, trying to go back to each other or calling each other or texting each other or entertaining the idea of getting back with this ex, particularly even after like a 30-day period. All right. And I'll get into why that happens. But what you do is you have to ask yourself, so it leaves you with a question. If you're thinking about getting back with somebody, and if it's within the first year, and if you haven't really accepted and the breakup, what do I mean by accepted? I mean, you have radical acceptance of what happened. You actually feel good about the breakup rather than bad about it. You don't miss this other person anymore. You don't miss the old relationship. You're not in this pain pleasure balance disruption in your brain. You've moved on from the relationship. If you're not in that state of mind, usually within that first 6 months to a year, that might not happen for you. What's your reason for going back? Is it just the drug addict in you trying to cure your addiction with this person who your brain has associated as the source of beta endorphin and stimulation source of beta endorphin and a source of oxytocin and vasopressin? Is it just the drug addict part of your brain causing you to want to go back? Or is it something real, right? Is it something substantial? Is it a, is it something outside of your brain just telling you you need this? You know what I mean? To cure this addiction. Is it something more than that? Because if it's not, then what business do you have going back, right? What business do you have trying that? It's not even about her. It's not even about the relationship. It's about you curing your little addiction. All right. And so if that's the case, if you are not fully over it, it's particularly within that first year and you're trying to go back, you can probably assume it's the drug addict inside of you that wants to cure that addiction or feel some relief from the addiction at her expense. Notice how I said at her expense, because it's not her well-being isn't even a part of this equation. You can lie to yourself and say that. That's another thing, by the way. How do you know an addict or an alcoholic is lying? Because their lips are moving. All right. So that's an old saying that people in AA use and people in addiction recovery use, because they understand that people who have addictions and who are in the grips of their addiction, right? They're in that sense of craving. They're not quite fully recovered yet enough that they will tend to lie so that they can justify what they're doing, so they can end up using their drug of choice or alcohol. So that's very common. And this is why people who are addicted to drugs and alcohols are compulsive liars a lot of times when it comes to facing their addiction, talking about their addiction, their behavior that leads to the relapse, their behavior after the relapse, hiding stuff. I mean, this is very, very common. And so you guys are probably going to lie to yourself, particularly during this period when you have those emotions and you haven't accepted a breakup. You're going to lie to everybody else. You're definitely going to lie to yourself to give yourself an excuse to do dumb things that won't actually get the girl back. It's just going to sort of repel her in the situation, right? And so I'm not just going to talk about, by the way, this. I'm going to talk about rekindling if you are over the relationship and what that looks like. I'm going to talk about what could happen if it were to work. All right. So we're talking about both things, but I got to cover this at least in the beginning. Now, in my community, okay, I have a course there for free that you need to go through if you're going through this, even if it's years later. All right. You need to go back into that course and do a breakup recovery. All right. So it's about 6 to 8 weeks long. It's free in my community. I offer that for free. Now, why do I offer that for free? Because I have other stuff that you can pay for. All right. But I offer that one for free because my military background, dealing with soldiers, dealing with guys who have made decisions that they can't take back. All right. In other words, they've taken themselves out of the gene pool. All right. The S word you can't say on YouTube. All right. They've taken their lives. All right. They've unalived themselves, whatever the popular term is. Behind pretty much every one of those scenarios was a broken relationship. I'm not saying the girl that they were with is at fault or anything crazy, but it's a broken relationship was the reason for, was a big reason why they took themselves out or thought about it or did other destructive things. All right. So this thing that you go through with a breakup and the attachment issues and not processing through a breakup appropriately can have really bad consequences. It could cost you your life. And so I, as a service to you guys, offer that material for free. It's exactly what to do. It is the solution to this problem. 99% of the time, like most of the time, there's a very small percentage, and usually that's because there's something else going on in that person's brain, okay, that's causing this high attachment. And it's usually something, could be something diagnosable, right? And they need to see a therapist and something like that, okay? It could be a diagnosable condition that they might have. And there's a very, very small percentage of people that might have that, and that's why they're excessively attached to an ex. I've only seen that a couple of times, though. out of working with thousands of people now at this point. So working with thousands of people, most people are over a breakup and into radical acceptance and into seeing the breakup as a gift and a benefit rather than a detriment within 6 to 8 weeks. Doesn't matter if you broke up today or if you broke up 5 years ago and you're still not over it. You go through this 6 to 8 week program, which involves a bunch of different mindset tools and activities. What you're going to do is you're going to train your brain to let go of the attachment and move towards being recovered, which means you no longer have this neurochemical response the same way when you see this other person. It's truly a course on letting go. If you have dealt with death, all right, in the family, or death of a loved one or whatever, or loss, this course will help you with that as well. So it's free. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm giving it to you. It's in the community. Go there and do it. So that is that. Okay. That is that. You need to recover from the breakup, or it's not going to work out in the future with anybody, even if she throws some sex at you. Even if you've been broken up and you try to get back together with her and she starts, she's got her own motivations. And so she starts banging you again and stuff. You might think you're on cloud nine and we're back together. Everything's going to work out. It's not. It's going to crash and burn. All right. Because let me tell you, here's the stats. All right. It's close to half, like close to 50% of breakups involve rekindling with each other. So in other words, people break up and then they get back together for something. They bang each other. All right. They start banging again, or they get into a situationship, or they outright jump back into a commitment, whatever it is. But 50% of breakups involve not a clean breakup, involve both people coming back to each other at some point within that year, usually. And then what happens is the breakup rate of second time around relationships is like twice as high as normal relationships. And most relationships break up. So the probability is even less that it's going to work out the second time around. And the reason for that is because the people that are getting back together are doing so to cure their addiction to each other. And it's really the addiction to the neurochemicals that are associated by the other person. And so they're trying to cure an addiction and relieve pain instead of having processed through the pain and starting a new relationship with an old person that you've been with before. So that's the difference. All right. If it's going to work out, it has to be a new relationship with someone you've been with previously. It can't be a relationship where there's a lot of unanswered feelings and unprocessed feelings. Because if that's the case, those are all going to start coming up, even if you start off on the right track, even if she's like I said, banging you again, excited to see you, things are going well. All of that unprocessed stuff is going to start coming up for her and for you. And chances are nothing's changed in terms of what needed to change for it to work out. And you're just going to be in an old framework. And the old framework is a failing framework, because if it was successful, you would have still been together, right? So the old framework is a failed model, and that's what you get back into, and it doesn't work. That's what happens most of the time, right? So how can it work? All right, let's look at that. Well, a couple other things though too I got to mention. So things about the brain. So we see what is going on neurochemically, and then how all of those neurochemicals that you get addicted to that are suppressed, you want to start feeding that again. But there's other stuff as well that happens. So our brain has a tendency to have a cognitive bias with time. So, well, let me look at these. So 6 to 8 weeks is how long it should take to get over a breakup. Yes, Juan is correct. Juan is also in the mastermind group, and so he knows how it is. All right. Looking at your guys' chats here, seeing if there's any questions. All right. So this one says, to me, it boils down to having the correct mindset to handle heartbreak if it happens again, your insurance policy, so to speak. What is your best advice on overcoming heartbreak? It wrecks men. Yeah. So Jose, that's a great question. And my best advice is this. It is to take my free course. All right. I know it sounds like dumb, like I'm really just trying to like promote a free course, but look, there's ways to like all of the ways to process the stuff that is productive and promoting moving and reach, because you have to retrain your brain is really what it boils down to. Your brain has a neurological response which causes a physiological response. So you have a physical response based on how your brain is processing the relationship and the breakup. And what happens is when that happens, you have to retrain your brain to process this breakup in such a way where you are accepting of the breakup and you're no longer attached. Okay. And there's specific tools and activities to do that. It's in the course, right? And so it's several hours long. So I'm not going to be able to sum that up in a YouTube video, but I can point that to you, to you. That's how you do it. That's why I give it away for free though, because you're right. This stuff does destroy men. All right. Roy Ray, Roy Ray says, I find that once I hit the year marker, I want to date someone else. Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty common. It's just time. But here's the thing on that. So time, what happens with time is that's a really good, good thing to mention here. So what happens with time, actually, that's a good segue into what I'm about the next thing. So what happens with time is this, okay? So, I mean, out of an arbitrary number, let's say 100% or something, right? Is everything levels off over time. So this is what ends up happening. You might not process through shit, okay, exactly the right way. But what happens is everything sort of levels off. So your dopamine levels come back up to some normal amount, right? Where you can, it'll fluctuate throughout the days and the weeks, right? Your dopamine levels, depending on what your goals are and what you're going for. Your levels of stress, and your norepinephrine levels will come down to normal levels, cortisol normal levels again. You'll have normal levels of serotonin. You'll be self-sustaining in your levels, okay, of serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, cortisol, and your body will get used to lower levels of baseline oxytocin, vasopressin, and beta endorphin. You'll get some beta endorphin, oxytocin, and vasopressin through your social interactions, through your pet, right? Through other people and that you connect to and care about, but you sort of just get used to not having the feel good effects of these, the oxytocin, vasopressin, and beta endorphin. All right. And so that's we just kind of get used to that. Everything levels off after a period of time. Now, here's the thing though. You could just be like, well, I don't need to do this course and process it through 8 weeks, process through my breakup in 6 to 8 weeks. I like to suffer, so I'm going to let it happen in about a year. Someone could say that, right? Because people are incredibly lazy and stupid a lot. All right. So they like to just justify dumb things. And all right, I'm not going to go learn how to process through loss and learn any new skills. I'll just let time take its course. And what will happen is for most people, not all people though, some people will be hung up for years. And I'm going to explain how that happens. But for most people, your neurochemical responses level off. And so you'll feel better. You'll feel back to normal after a period of time. But here's the problem though. You haven't processed the traumatic effects of the breakup. So your brain hasn't learned to have different associations to the stimulus of loss, to the stimulus of rejection, to the stimulus of sexual rejection, right? And whatever happened during that breakup, your brain has not learned how to process differently those stimuluses. And so you haven't really learned how to reframe those events in a way where they become an advantage to you. Okay. You don't have a winning mindset when it comes to relationships because you're not reframing those past events in a way that's productive and good for future relationships. So you may feel better after a year and ready to date, but you now have all of these effects from the previous events. And what happens is then that's what we call baggage. Okay. So then you carry that baggage with you into your future relationships. Even if you're not getting back with that old flame, you're taking it into a new relationship. Well, you carry with you all of the negative effects of the breakup if you haven't processed through it. And so that's the problem with just relying on emotions. But over time, because our bodies are designed to survive, you get used to not stimulating these things and these attachment chemicals. And then the brain recognizes, okay, I guess we're not going to be getting those attachment chemicals anymore. So we're going to take the stress down because we're wasting a lot of energy. The brain tends to not want to waste energy. And so you end up leveling off basically over time. But leveling off is not processing things. And as a lot of guys have found out the hard way, particularly if they try to rekindle an old flame, even years later, they feel better, everything's better. And then they meet that ex that they knew from 10 years ago. This happens to a lot of older couples. And they're going to try it out again. Well, what they find is once they get past their little honeymoon phase is that nothing's changed. Why has nothing changed? Because she didn't process through anything and she didn't, and you didn't process through anything. So neither one of you made any improvements from the breakup. And in fact, what you did instead was you've damaged yourself from the breakup and you haven't really repaired the damage. You just sort of let time take its course. And now you're re-stimulating all that trauma and damage from the past in different ways with this old flame. That's how that happens. And so you have to process through this shit. And there's ways to do it. I will argue, much of the ways to do it will happen like when people know what to do. They'll do a lot of similar things I mentioned in the course. But I have some things in the course too, like use of EMDR, use of some different mindset tools that will expedite the process. Okay. So it's the course will teach you not only how to process through this stuff in an effective way, but how to do it quickly. All right. You really expedite your success. There really isn't, it's nothing but a win really to go through this. It's all win, no loss for you to learn this stuff, really is. And it's kind of a superpower too. Because think about it like this. You're in a new relationship, things are going well, but you want to have frame in that relationship. You don't want to fear loss, fear of her cheating on you, fear of bad behavior, fear of disrespect. What are you afraid of? Why do you guys have these responses? Either, anxious attachment responses and getting upset or angry, flipping out on their romantic partners, or the opposite, being aloof and cold and cool because they're so red-pilled, bro, it's just your turn, you know what I mean? And being that guy and just destroying the relationships anyways, either way. Like all of these toxic responses, like why do you guys do that? Like you do that because you're fearful of the relationship breaking and the traumatic response that's going to follow. You're fearful of losing your ass, losing your life, so to speak, losing your assets due to all of the emotional distress that these things can place on you. Well, imagine if you had the ability to process through grief and process through loss within 6 to 8 weeks, and you would be fine. And you knew it, going into every situation. If I lose this relationship, I'm going to be fine. It's not that I want to lose a relationship, but I'm going to process through it and I'll be good. In fact, I won't just be fine, but I'll actually be better off. I mean, imagine if you knew that every personal relationship, whether it's friendship, close family member, or your romantic relationships, every relationship you have, if you lose that relationship, you know that you can process through the loss and be better for it. You know that with a romantic partner or without that romantic partner, you are going to be better no matter what. You know that because you have this magical superpower to be able to process grief and process loss. Imagine if you could have that. That's what I give you for fucking free in a course. Right. And so it just amazes me more people don't do it because it is the magical superpower. It's the thing people ask for. What's the answer? What's the magic thing? Well, I give you the magic thing. but you have to do things with it. And that does go to prove something. I'll get a little tangent here, but that does go to prove something, that guys mistaken knowledge for skills and action. That's not the same thing. Knowledge doesn't do shit for you if you don't turn that knowledge into skill, meaning being capable and able to do something, and then taking action with those skills. If you don't do the action part and the skill part, your knowledge is useless, mostly useless. So people are seeking knowledge. They want the magical answer, as if the knowledge and the magical answer is going to replace the skill and the action you have to take. It will not replace your effort. So nothing replaces your effort. Okay. But anyways, that's what happens. And this is partly why you guys are susceptible to falling into these past relationships and then screwing them up. And is because what happens is everything baselines out to, you're no longer stressed out anymore about the breakup. You're no longer thinking about it that much. You've become used to, not getting fed the oxytocin, vasopressin, beta endorphins, right? Everything kind of levels out back to normal. And then, maybe you sort of run into that ex-girlfriend or that ex-girl you dated for a little while from like 3 years ago, and everything's leveled off. So you think that you're okay, but then what happens is you're not okay. All right. That's what happens all the time to people. They think they're good and then they're not good. Okay. And the reason why is because they didn't really process through the past relationship. And there's a number of other reasons that things that happen as well. So one of those is because all of your neurochemicals level off. It creates what's called a cognitive bias. That's what sets in. We have something called rosy retrospection. It's called sometimes. There's different names for it. But rosy retrospection is a bias where you remember the past as being better than it was. And so that tends to be what happens when you look at old relationships. Our mind has a way of compartmentalizing. When the neurochemicals of stress are high, we're focused on all of the danger, the threats, and the negative. Okay. And that's natural because it's our brain telling us to get out of danger, to get out of this problem. So your brain is highlighting all of the problems and all of the negatives so that you can now solve problems and avoid more negatives and get out of the situation. So after a breakup, you're focused on negative stuff. But then, of course, as a man, okay, not as a woman, because women don't have this same thing with vasopressin. They have different things that go on. But as a man, you're very conflicted because you have all this danger, threat signal, negative stuff, and bad feelings. But then you also have a strong sense of wanting to take care of your ex, what is becoming an ex during the breakup. That strong caretaker sense is still there because it takes a while for that vasopressin response to get destroyed. Okay, so you're between like two things here. You hate her and love her at the same time. It's a very confusing time for a lot of guys, right? And so that, but after a while that stuff levels off. And so when you think back, well, the cortisol high stress is no longer part of what's going on in the brain a year, 2, 3 years later when your neurochemicals have leveled off. So what happens? So the brain is now going to remember things differently than when you have high cortisol, right? So when your stress level comes down, your brain remembers things now different. What does it remember? It remembers all the good times. You see, it remembers the good stuff. And you tend to forget the fights, the bad stuff, some of the really, really hard things. Unless those things left a very serious scar or trauma, you tend to forget them. And this is a very common thing. And that creates that cognitive bias. So then you see that girl a couple years later, and, she's got her cognitive bias. You have your cognitive bias, right? You guys forget all of the problems you had and you start seeing all the good stuff. And, sparks start happening a little bit and you start wondering, could this thing work out? That's what happens a lot of times. And here's the thing to think about. Imagine if in your relationship, you could take your stress level down during those fights and during those conflicts, during those problems, and you could see things the way you would 3 years later when you don't have those things. You could see those things from a neutral mindset or even a positive mindset versus a negative bias. You probably wouldn't break up. Interesting thought, right? So, part of your job with Frame is to use the tactics and techniques that I give you, like Luca, for example, which is a communication model, and be able to communicate in such a way, also knowing when to take time and space and some of these things so we can bring down that cortisol and those stress levels. So we bring the stress level in the brain down. Now the gratitude, the appreciation, the good feelings can start to happen again. And now you can solve a problem with less of a negative bias and less of a feeling of threat or danger. You probably wouldn't even break up if it's a good enough relationship. A lot of breakups happen because of just getting in a negative cognitive bias due to stress levels spiking forward. And that could be solved through communication, but also mental, and I say communication, but people say that and they don't explain what that is. People think they can communicate and actually they can't. They don't know what they're doing. So you got to go back in my past videos or get in my community to talk more about how to communicate appropriately. But it's appropriate communication and persuasion skills that you as a man will get you to keep your relationships together that are worth keeping together. That's something to think about. But that rosy retrospection, that cognitive bias happens later. So this is why, even though the thing broke up and whatever happened, you forget about the bad stuff. Another thing is too, guys get caught in an injustice loop. Injustice loop is a term I use, but you see it happen all the time. All right. Injustice loop is when you are looking backwards and some sort of injustice or perceived injustice has happened, and you want there to be justice. You want there to be answers. People will talk about it in terms of, well, I want closure. All right. Closure is not real. Closure is just something that happens up in your brain. Okay. But what happens is people want some sort of external um, way of getting closure. They want something that they can't control to give them the closure that they need and to undo the injustice, or at least be able to explain the injustice in such a way that's satisfying. And some things in life are just not fair. And that's the way it fucking is. And you just have to accept it. There's injustice out there and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't press the rewind button. You can't undo what's been done. That's just it. There's an injustice. It happened to you. So sad. Who gives a shit? Nobody else. And you shouldn't either. Let's move on, right? But people don't move on. This is called an injustice loop. They get stuck in that past thing because they want justice to happen or some sort of closure or explanation. And those things will never happen. It will never occur. They will only happen in your brain. For you, you can do it. You can create the closure you need. You can close the loop. You can accept what's happened and you can move forward, but only you can do it. And what happens is people want some sort of external source to solve this problem for them, to create justice and to give them closure. And there isn't any. And so people get stuck in the past that way. That's what happens. And so it's really important you don't get that doesn't happen to you. And a lot of that times that injustice loop happens over a breakup. Some girl cheats on you, goes with another guy, or just discards you, and you're not sure why she discarded you and you really liked her. And you feels like an injustice now, and you want this closure, you want answers, and there isn't any. And instead of accepting it, you get stuck. And a lot of you guys want to go back to an old girl to try to cure this injustice. And it doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work. It only causes you more pain and heartache and keeps you getting more stuck. So the solution to that, if that's your problem, is to not get caught in the injustice loop by processing through and getting to radical acceptance of whatever the event was, accepting the injustice for what it is, understanding it as best as you can, and accepting what you don't understand, and just under knowing that that's just part of life, and that you learn from it. You take the lessons you can take from it. So the loss becomes a win, and then you move on in life and you win in life in other ways, right? You leave that behind you, and you go forward and you do bigger and better things. That's the answer to that. And there's ways to do that. We'll need to schedule a session, or you'll need to get in a coaching program. We'll need to talk about it, or even just post it on the forum for free, and I might have some answers for you. But injustice loops happen, and you want to be able to get through that. You don't want to go rekindle an old relationship, or try to get something going with some ex or whatever, because of an injustice loop, because you're trying to get closure or answers or solve something. That can't be the reason, because if that's the reason, you're going to just cause yourself more pain. You're not going to solve the problem. You won't solve the problem. All right. And so that's a thing. And then another thing I put in my notes was a lack of abundance of options is a big reason guys will go back to. Basically, what's happening is the options that you have in front of you don't feel as good as what you remember from this past relationship. You just look at it like that. You know what I mean? So if that's generally what's going on, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it can be a bad thing. All right. So a lot of guys don't learn additional skills after breakups. Most guys don't. All right. So when I say learn additional skills, seduction is a skill. Getting women to like you is a skill. Getting women to go on dates with you is a skill. Getting women to want to have sex with you and to enjoy sex when they're having sex with you, that's a skill. Getting women to come back for more, to commit, to manage a relationship, to hold frame, all these things are skills. And a lot of guys leave a relationship and they don't develop any additional skills. They're just like, oh shit, that's over, that sucks, and they get over it, and they're like, well, time to date new people. And they don't really grow at all. They don't really I mean, there might be some skill development and experiences just based on consequences, right? Where some natural development happens, natural wisdom. So that's like this much, but this much skill development that could and should be happening isn't happening, because guys are not being aware, and their guys are not taking these opportunities to learn how to do better. Something we do in the community. All right. Something you need to do. So that's the first thing. You don't develop any additional skills. So then what happens is, a lot of times too, you don't develop additional skills, and maybe your SMV declines. So maybe you're hotter, better looking, 5, 10 years ago or something. Maybe your financial picture hasn't changed that much. Your life hasn't changed that much, but you've declined a little bit in maybe your health and your fitness and the way you look, or some other areas of your life. Maybe you got zeroed out in a divorce. Now you're less financially capable than you were so many years ago. Things like that, right? And so what happens is, sometimes for men, is the SMV declines because you're not making up for that decline by learning additional skills. And so you have less options now for women. You're not meeting new women and better women than somebody of your past. And so you have nostalgic memory of someone from the past because you've forgotten the bad stuff. And then the women that you have access to in the present don't feel or seem as good. This is by definition a lack of abundance of options. And so this is what causes you to go back. If it's not because you're hung up, if it's not because you haven't processed that old breakup and that you're not fully over it and you're trying to solve, your inner game problems with an ex, like, that's not the reason. If the reason you're getting back with somebody is, the reason why you're trying that out is probably because you don't have better options in front of you. That's most likely the reason. All right. And so there's something to think about. Okay. So a good cure for this is to learn skills so that you can have an abundance of more options after a breakup. And that's what prevents you from sliding back into an old relationship that's not going to work. Okay. Now let's talk about how it can work. So how it can work is, you have to accept the past breakup. All right. So this number one is, and I've been talking about it all video, is acceptance of the past breakup with no hangups and no trauma from whatever happened with her in the past. So much easier if it was a casual situation, right? Like if you were just sort of hooking up and it was some girl that you liked, but then it just fizzled out for whatever reason, it wasn't that serious. Much easier to solve number one, right? Because there's probably not a lot of trauma or hang up there. But if there is any hang up or trauma or any like, gee, like no, any injustice loop, why did this happen? I need closure. Any of that shit, it's not going to work. I promise you. All right. You have to be over that stuff. The reason why is because you can't climb back into the past, especially a past that didn't work out, in order to make a future work out together. You can't go into a failed past and relive that to get a successful future. You have to start over and create something new and different if it's going to work out in the future. Okay? And most guys aren't going to be able to do that, or most girls for that matter, who are also in the relationship participating, right? So that's number one, though. You have to be over it. That's that little 6 to 8 week course that I give away for free that'll help you. You got to be over the shit, and you got to be accepting of everything and okay with what happened and how whatever. And it's like a clean slate. So that's number one. And she has to get there too. If she's not there, good luck. It's probably not going to work too well. But you as the man, though, you have the frame. You should anyway. And so you should be able to lead it in a good direction, even if she does have some past hangups. Okay. But you're not going to be able to if you have past hangups. That's just the way it is. Number two is you have to then be outcome independent. What does that mean? Okay. You're going to go out with this new person, this ex or whatever. You're going to go out with this old flame, see what happens. But whatever happens, happens. If she doesn't call you back, if she fucks your friend instead, if she, decides to call you back a bunch and falls madly in love with you, whatever happens, happens. You have to be willing to take it or leave it. If she just fizzles out again and doesn't, whatever, it's not for her. You're not reopening old wounds and, no. All right. You're not overly invested. Okay. That's what outcome independence means. You're not overly invested. You have a desired outcome, but that desired outcome, and I'm going to get to that, what that desired outcome should be. But that desired outcome is what it is, but it's okay if it doesn't happen that way. You're not going to try to control the things you cannot control. You're just going to do the best actions you can to get the best desired outcome. But if it doesn't work out, you're okay with it not working out. You're going to be fine. All right. So that's the thing. So you have to accept the loss. Number one, accept the past breakup. No hangups, no trauma, no bullshit, no old feelings. And you have to have a take it or leave it, outcome independent approach to the new thing. All right. So that's number two. And number three is you got to be what I could call the one up. All right. This was written by a counselor, talked about one up or one down type of relationships. But it means that you offer the most value and she is more invested in you than you are in her. Okay. So you cannot be more invested in her and she cannot, you can't be the person with a value deficit. You have to have more value to offer to the relationship than she does. And you have to be in a place where you are not as invested as she might be. So in other words, you're outcome independent and she's really, thinking about it, working out with you. That's a good place to be. If she's unsure and you're chasing her around trying to get her back, not a good place to be. It probably won't work out if that's the case. All right. She'll use you for attention and time and she just won't feel it. I'm not saying she'll use you on purpose either, but she'll enjoy the attention and time that she's being given, but she's not going to feel that draw and that attraction to you, most likely, if you are invested more than she is. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not calling her, texting her, getting her on the date. You might be leading in that direction. You might be doing those things, but then she has to be showing more investment, more of an eagerness to want to get on the date with you. Internally and emotionally, she has to be at a place where she's got a little bit more excitement about this. And she's maybe has more dread or worry about it not working out, or more anxiety even. She can have more anxiety than you. It can't be the other way around. If she's like, maybe I don't really give a fuck, and you're like, oh, I really hope it's going to work out, it's not going to work out for you. All right. And the reason is just the sad, uncomfortable truth about hypergamy. All right. So women want to know that they're dating or mating upward. If you are more invested than her, particularly in a scenario where it broke up, especially if you were broken up with, or if you lost her versus the other way around, she needs to feel that she is mating upward. If you're more invested than her, she won't feel that way. Chances are. Okay. And so if she doesn't feel that way, and if your SMV or your value that you bring to the table isn't perceived as higher, then she's not mating upward, and then she won't be attracted to you. Those are just the rules. I don't make them. That's just the way it is. That's how we are. So that's why that has to be a thing. So that's number 3. And number 4, whatever caused the breakup before has to now be different. So casual hookups or whatever, fine. But if it's going to grow into something more, whatever caused you guys to break up previously, that has to be fundamentally different in the present time if it's going to work. Most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, you won't know actually until you get a little bit into it. But just know that if there's any future in it, you can't have the same mistakes and same problems that broke you up before, right? That doesn't make sense. Something has to be different. She has to be different. You have to be different. Situations have to be different. You guys have to have grown and learned from things. There has to be a different dynamic and a different things happening than whatever it was that caused things to break up before. Otherwise, you're just going to rinse and repeat the same breakup. Okay. So those are your 4 things if it's going to work. Now you need to ask yourself though, why? So why are you doing this to begin with though? So okay, cool. It could work. If those 4 things are in play, probability is high that it will not work, usually because one of those 4 things are going to fall apart and then it's just not going to work. So it's more effort. It's harder than trying to just get a new girl. It really is. I should say, it can be harder, right? Most of the time it's more difficult. So why then? Why are you trying to do this? Is it because you're lazy and you haven't learned any skills? And sorry to call out about 80% of you listening. Maybe not 80% of you guys, probably about 40% of you guys listening. If more people listen to me, it'd be like 80%. Most people don't listen to me because they hate it when I say shit like that and they get turned off by it and they don't have the attention span to learn anything. So then they go other places. But for the rest of you who actually want to learn things, there's about half of you, probably, yeah. You have to ask yourself why you're doing it. And it's because you don't have abundance and you haven't learned any new skills. Well, you need to solve that problem. That needs to be the number one thing you need to solve. All right. Is to get some better skills and to get some better skills in the dating market and to up your sexual market value and do all those things versus focusing on some old flame that you just have residual feelings for. You know what I mean? So that's that. But why should you, if you are going to do it, and it's those few times it could work out, why? What are your reasons? What's the reasons you should be doing it? If there is, because there's a million reasons why you could be doing it, but what's a good reason? I boil it down to 2. One is you're curious. You're just curious. You're over the past thing. You run into this girl. Let's say it's a few years later. She's showing signs of attraction. You find her attractive. You're just curious. You want to see if something different could happen, because you've grown and you're different than you once were. You can see some differences in her. So you're just kind of curious to see where it goes. You're not over invested, but you're not under invested. You are sexually attracted and you do want to see. So that's one good reason. You just happen to be curious, right? You remember the good stuff. You're curious about the other things. So you're willing to give it a try. You're willing to give it a shot. She's invested. She wants to do it. So seems to want to kind of move into something. So you're like, okay. So that could be an okay reason. All right. Um, and then another one would be, oh, sorry, looking at my notes here. Yeah. So, and another one could be, of course, that you're not in a serious thing now. There's not a girl, she had good qualities in the past that you find hard to replace. So there's good redeeming qualities about this person that you haven't, they're hard to come by. So you have good qualities in front of you, you have a good connection, good things that are there, and you're just sort of curious if it could work out in the future. You've processed through trauma, you're over the old breakup, you don't have any expectations, you're outcome independent. That would be a healthy way of going into it. Now, here's the thing though, most of you guys are not going to go into this in a healthy way. Most of you guys are going to lie to yourselves. It goes back to the addiction argument, right? Is you're going to lie and do mental gymnastics. You're going to lie to yourself to allow yourself to try to dig up, the corpse of an old relationship. And then it's just going to be a disaster. That's what's going to happen. So to get to this place of outcome independence and where those 4 things that I mentioned are in play, like to get to that place, man, it really takes a lot of honesty with yourself, a lot of personal integrity, and you really can't bullshit yourself. And most of you guys are going to, which is why I keep recommending my community, because you can post this shit up on the community and we can give you feedback so you don't bullshit yourself. We are all susceptible to bullshitting ourselves. You're not the only one. Okay. I'm susceptible. Everybody's susceptible. So this is why we want to get feedback from others, even if it's not, we don't agree with all the feedback, even. It just causes us to think and see things from a different lens. So we're not BSing ourselves and getting caught in our own little bubble, right? Our own little cognitive biases, right? And so you want to be able to do that. Okay. So with that, I'm going to share with you something that was in my community. One of the things that inspired this video, because there's a few things actually, not just this one, but a guy had posted this in my community. And this is exactly what I mean, okay, about getting feedback. This is what he did. He's a smart man by asking instead of getting caught up into your cognitive biases. So he wrote, so this my community member, my group member wrote, I was in a situationship with a girl 2 years ago and she ended up rejecting me and I got my heart broken. A year after we talked a little bit and there was a chill vibe. Now I'm back in the country for 2 months and I was wondering if I should plan something with her, or because of what happened, leave it in the past. That is it better to keep her in the past and not hit her up? So that was his question. Should I hit this girl up or not? So not a whole lot of detail, but here is my response. Okay. Is my response to you guys if you would ask the same question. Is she reaching out to you or are you reaching out to her? It's my first question. And I said, don't say both. It's almost never equal in these circumstances. So either she is primarily reaching out to you or you are primarily reaching out to her. So which one is it? Now, if you are primarily reaching out to her, then stop. That's my advice. Why? Because in his case, I wrote, she rejected you and you got your heart broken, quotes. So if you are reaching out more and the primary person to upkeep contact, then that is you qualifying to her. And that makes her the one up in this situation, meaning the less invested in the situation. So she rejected you before and now she's less invested now. So if that's the case, you will almost certainly fall back into your old patterns if you were to even get her on a meetup, and then she's just going to reject you again. So in this scenario, you're likely trying to undo the past in order to get over the damage to your ego and the trauma and the damage to your identity from when she dumped you to begin with, instead of going through and recovering from the damage and becoming stronger for it. So that's hypothetically what's happening, and most likely if it's that scenario. Now, so what do you do in this case? If you are reaching out to her more, even though she's receptive or whatever, she's breadcrumbing you, right? With responses, but you're reaching out more than she is reaching out you. What do? Particularly, again, remember, he was rejected and dumped, right? So what you do is you stop reaching out to her. Pretty simple. All right. Then you go process through your damage and trauma. You do the 8-week recovery. All right. That's what you do. Okay. Stop hitting her up. Go do your 8-week recovery. That's your rejection. Rather than trying to get through what happened through her, you're going to do it on your own, right? Rather than trying to do it at her expense. Now, when you stop reaching out to this girl and she knows you're in the same country, she knows you're in the same area, especially if she's on social media, whatever, right? She'll know. Girls have a way of finding things out. You'll see how important she is to you. When you stop reaching out to a girl, you'll see how important you are to her, or how not important you are to her, right? So one of two things will probably happen. Either she won't care that you stopped reaching out and she's not going to reach out to you and it doesn't matter. That's going to tell you where you stand with her, which is she's low investment. She rejected you before and she's low investment now. Your best bet is to move on. Okay. Don't keep banging on a door that's not going to open for you. All right. Now, what could happen though is she starts reaching out to you more so. When you stop contacting her first, she starts reaching out to you. Well, if that's what's happening, then that is demonstrating some investment. So maybe you can proceed now, you see? And so in this case, you want to pull back. If you're the primary person, you got rejected and you're primarily reaching out, stop reaching out, stop lying to yourself, stop rationalizing, oh, she thinks she likes me, and over analyzing everything she says and coming up with excuses and reasons as to her low investment. Just stop reaching out. And if her investment doesn't come up when you drop off the planet, and if she's not trying to get a hold of you, then she didn't care. Okay. And you need to move on. But let's say she does. Okay. Let's say she is trying to reach out and she's, interested in talking to you. Okay. So now what do you do? All right. So you got to ask yourself what, and I said to him, first, let's be clear. What do you really want? Number one. Two, do you radically accept that this girl rejected you and the reasons why she rejected you? Number three, are you not attached to the outcome? Meaning if she decides to not fuck you, or if she goes to get with your best friend instead of you after being introduced, are you going to be butthurt all over again and hurt, or are you going to be able to move on pretty easily? So what I'm asking is relationship to the four things I mentioned, right? Is what do you really want? First of all, what do you want to get out of this? If it's anything outside of curiosity, right, then it's too much. Or do you radically accept what happened in the past? Are you okay and outcome independent with what could happen? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. All right. And so then I say to him basically that to summarize. All right. And so then I tell him at the end here, I said, now the trick is most guys will lie to themselves when asked to do this analysis, asked to answer some hard questions. And then they'll go set something up with a girl and then they'll fuck it up. Right. So I challenge you to be honest with yourself. That's what I said to him. And this is what I challenge you guys to do as well. I challenge you guys to be honest with yourselves. Right. Now, let me go back into some questions here, some comments. All right. What is the course on breakups? Cool, but he is already there and he found it. So be like Jose. All right. Join the community. Get in that course for free. It's going to help you out. All right. Okay. So Brandon here says, I would say why to get back to her. I would say why to get back to get her is your kids you share. I think that's a reason, not a good reason. I think you can have a relationship with your kids without a relationship with mom. And sometimes that's a healthier answer. If the relationship with mom isn't good, then it's better that you don't have a romantic relationship with her and that you have a co-parenting situation and that's it. Okay. It's not, you're not going to rekindle something for the kids. That won't work. I'm telling you. You're going to rekindle something because, and this is one of those rationalizations, Brandon. This is one of the lies that men tell themselves. Oh, well, we share kids together, so I need to stay in this relationship. No, you don't. That's a lie. You don't have to. I need to get back with her because of I'm doing it because of the kids. No, you're not. All right. Because I mean, I'm not saying the kids aren't part of it, but I mean, that's not why. Right. The reason why is because there's an emotional attachment. All right. So the reason why is because there's unfinished business and trauma that you're trying to resolve from the past breakup through a future relationship, which will never work and will fail and cause both the kids problem as well as you and her, which is the wrong reason. Or you can process through the trauma of the breakup, be moved on from the breakup, and then, okay, you know what? I have an attraction to her. She has an attraction to me. We do share kids together. That's not what's going to make or break the relationship working, but that is a connection we have. And maybe we start dating again. And maybe we see what could happen, right? And maybe we see if it could work out. Maybe there's some things I changed in myself. Maybe there's some things she changed within herself. The reasons we broke up before have been maybe changed or resolved. I see evidence of that. So maybe it could work out. But if it's going to work out, it's going to be because of you and the girl being compatible and emotionally and sexually connected, regardless of the children. All right. The children is something you share, but it's not something that is going to make or break. It's not going to make the relationship work. And so using that as the reason is not really, that's one of those rationalizations I talk about. All right. And we all do it, man. So I'm not trying to be too hard on you. All right. I know, man. I actually announced this one somewhat early-ish, a few hours ago at least. I know. Well, I'm glad you're here now. All right. I wrote in the community about my ex from high school dating my cousin. I haven't read that one yet, man. So don't worry. I'll be back. I'll get into that one like this weekend. I saw your post though. So yeah, I saw your post. I'm curious about that one too. So I will go check that out. All right. Yeah. So, well, hopefully it's going good, that you've never broken up with her. Hopefully it's going good. If it's not, you know, well, again, you can get in my community too. We could talk more about details outside of YouTube here. But you can if it's struggling, share what's going on. Maybe we got solutions for you. You want to get the relationship to work despite regardless of kids, you know what I mean? Because that's going to set, and I'm speaking from someone who has a co-parenting ex, right? So I'm not together with the mom of my son. Okay. So I'm in that scenario and we're better co-parenters. We're not good relationship compatible. And it's better for my kid that we work well together as co-parents and not trying to be together romantically when it doesn't work romantically. I'm not even in it. I don't even want a romantic relationship with her. So it doesn't work, you see. And I'm sure she doesn't want one with me either, which is good. And so it's not going to work, if we don't want each other. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of men that I've gotten to work with that I've gotten them to have good co-parenting relationships. I'm in a great co-parenting relationship. right? So there's a lot of circumstances where it can be just fine, better than if you were to try to be together. I mean, obviously the idealistic scenario would be two people fit together well romantically, they're in a happy healthy relationship and they're raising kids together. That's obviously the ideal, but in absence of the ideal, it's not good to have two people that are not compatible sexually, emotionally, that are not a good relationship couple trying to raise kids together. And in my opinion, that's not a good idea. The reason it's not a good idea is because the kids will, regardless of what you tell them, the children will see that as the model, and they're not going to have a good model for themselves for the future. They're going to see mom and dad not really getting along too well and not really fitting together too well. And that becomes normalized for them. It'd be better for them to see you not fitting together and then either trying to make it work with somebody else or just not fitting together and then being honest about that versus pretending to fit together for the children. You see what I mean? Because they're going to see that and that becomes the model for them for what a romantic relationship should look like versus it breaking up and them having to then say, oh, okay, that's not what a relationship should look like because they're not together. So now I need to look for a different model. You see what happens? So that's just my thoughts on that. And yeah, man, share it, dude. Definitely share it. Yeah, no problem, brother. Like I said, I will check that out. All right. So we got a lot of stuff here. Okay. You got some guidance. You got some things. I will caveat again. I will say, as I said in the beginning, y'all know that it's not a good idea to try to rekindle things with an ex most of the time. You don't need me to tell you that. You don't need me to just parrot off what other people are saying on the internet because y'all know it, right? Yet we do it all the time. Guys do it all the time. And so understand your reasons for doing it have to do with cognitive function, what's going on in your brain. And then it also has to do with, you know, yeah. Also, oftentimes a lack of abundance. And that lack of abundance comes from a lack of skill and a lack of SMV development, a lack of action. You might have some skills, but you're not taking action in your dating life. And so you just don't have a lot going on. And then you meet this girl and you haven't had anyone really replace her or whatever. And so now you're thinking about it with an old flame. So there's a lot of reasons not to do it. Okay. But you know, there are those few scenarios where it has worked out. I've given you the formula here in this video for free as to what ingredients need to be in play if it's going to work out. So go back and review the video if you're curious. I named 4 things. Okay. So if you're passively listening and not really paying attention, go backwards, find the 4 things, write them down. All right. That's if you're in this scenario, if those 4 things are not in play, it's not going to work. All right. And if you in the last piece of advice here is you need feedback on this. Men just lie to themselves most of the time when it comes to these things. We all bullshit ourselves. So you got to get feedback from some other people who are looking at things a little bit differently, a little bit objectively, maybe more objectively than you. Even if you don't agree with what they tell you, having the conversation, writing it down, presenting it, talking about it, it causes you to see things a little bit differently so that you can make better choices in your life. Community is for that. Okay. You can go do that for free over there. Thanks again for joining me this Friday. Now you guys have a good weekend. Oh, last thing though, don't forget about Apex Inner Game. I'm putting out some content over there. It's pretty good. All right. So that's going to help you work on your inner game. It's a brand new channel. Go over there and support that channel, Apex Inner Game. All right. Take care.